So there was another request for me to talk about the deep and the dark web. So I'm going to do a little video right now on my personal understanding of those two things. And I think that belongs down here in a little root of our tree under the ground where it's deep and it's dark. The deep, dark web. So these are two separate concepts. So let's talk about them. We'll start with the deep web. So the deep web basically is just, I'm sure you've heard this before, it's just all the websites and things that don't automatically come up on Google, okay? And you're maybe wondering, like, what does that mean? Like, how can Google not see everything on the web? It just scrapes through the web. Well, it kind of does that, but it doesn't really only do that. It doesn't like go over every IP address to see if there's something there. That would just take too long and be too inefficient. What Google really does is it as far as I understand, Google basically like goes to websites that it knows already and then follows all the links in those websites, and then sometimes those websites link you to other websites, and then it just saves them in a big database on the internet, right? And then from that database, it has like all these efficient algorithms to go through that database and just figure out, like, when you type in a sentence, like what the most likely website is. Like, I'm not going to go into like what Google does, but there's many reasons why something wouldn't come up on Google, right? The first one I can think of right away is authentication. So if you're a user, right, and you want to go to a website, and maybe you're like it's your job or something like that, like you try and go to a website that's on the internet, but you have to put in your username and password and maybe even like scan a QR code or something like that to get into that website. If Google tries to get there, which it might like send a message that way. Right away it's just going to get stopped because the message is going to go there, and then that website is going to say, hey, look, you're not authorized. And then it's going to redirect to Google to a login page. And if Google sees that, it's just going to skip it. It's just going to say, hey, I'm not even going to try and index this. So in many ways, the deep web isn't really that crazy in terms of what it is, because there are many places where this is true, right? Like libraries. Sometimes you can't get into a library website without the username and password. Anything to do with governments, anything to do with like pretty much anything that requires your credentials also requires a password to protect your privacy. Now, that's one reason why you might not be on the deep web. Another reason might just be that you haven't exposed something that is at a web address to the public internet. So remember, we were talking about how you've got your computer, and then the computer is connected to your router, which connects to your wall, which connects out into the wider world. Well, you can have tons of like exposed endpoints on your computer at one time that you don't expose publicly, and it kind of breaks down at the router point. So you might have an IP address open. Let's say you've got an IP address. I'm just going to put in one that I make up. You might have like an IP address like this open on your computer because you're doing some web development and you're developing yourself a website. And when you're on your computer and you go into your computer's browser and you type that in, you're going to get that website here, right? But if someone on another computer tries to access that website, and like Google, if Google try and ping it, because there isn't a exposed part of the router that tells the internet, if you send me a message, please send a message to this IP address, it means that no one can get to it other than the person that's on that computer locally. And so that's just another example of the deep web, and why like there's a term, and why people say that like most of the internet is in the deep web, because most of the internet is in the deep web because most of it's useless and it's only local, and it's only really related to local machines. or to secure places on the internet, like libraries and schools and stuff. So that's the deep web. I think that the deep web is much less It's interesting because it just shows you how much is out there, but I think it's a lot less interesting than the dark web. Now the dark web is different. The dark web, it sounds so nefarious. It sounds like it's full of hackers and stuff like that, but like, to be honest, it's just a newer space, right? In the sense that like the dark web is about anonymity when you're surfing the internet, and it's kind of like a special set of websites that are on the web that require you to do special things in order to access them. And the special things you have to do assure your anonymity and the anonymity of anyone else you're interacting with on those websites. And so there's probably many different pieces to the dark web. I certainly don't know about all of them. I'm not even like close to being an expert on dark webby stuff. But what I can tell you is that there is a project called the Tor project, and it's a good example of dark web stuff. And the Tor project is basically a special kind of web browser that requires people, like anyone, including you, if you wanted to set up servers. A server is just a computer, remember? Like just a computer on the internet. But they set up servers that act as what are called Tor servers, I think. And there's a ton of them around the world. And there's this special thing that it does that if you use the Tor browser, because like Google Chrome, there is a browser called Tor. So you can use like the Tor browser to search something on the internet. And what the Tor browser does, and I do not know this in detail, but it somehow figures out like a random path for you. So if this browser is your computer, it sends to a node and finds a random path amongst the nodes, like this. Like that, maybe even goes back one, maybe it goes there. I mean, that'll be stupid to go back one, but whatever. This is just an example. And there's something special about the way that it does this and what it does at each node, which make it so that the only people who know where you came from is the direct person you're in contact with. So like this guy here knows that you came from there. But this guy here doesn't have any idea where you're from and only knows that you came from there. And this guy should have used a different color. This guy doesn't know, this guy up here doesn't know that this guy came from there. It only knows the last thing. So basically everything only knows the last position or something like that. And by doing this process, this weird random process, it basically protects you and makes it anonymous. You can send messages without the people on the other end having any way to track back where that message came from, right? Yet they're still able to respond to you. Bit weird, I know, but that's the idea. And so the dark web is this place where you need to use these kinds of technologies in order to access things. But of course, with anonymity comes the ability to do all kinds of stuff. Like on the dark web, I'm sure there are probably websites that are incredibly normal. They're just people concerned about their privacy and about surveillance. But then, of course, there's the websites where you can like pay to kill someone or pay to watch two bugs fight, or I don't freaking know, like, but or buy drugs or something like that. So the dark web is kind of known for the criminal activity aspect of it, but the criminal activity aspect really comes from the anonymity that you get from it, and that's really it. So just to summarize, the difference between the deep web and the dark web is that the deep web is all the websites that are behind walls for some reason or like not available publicly, but they're still technically part of the internet. And the dark web is a special set of websites that on the web, a special set of websites that are on the web that you need to use this special kind of anonymity software, and you're just at higher risk of getting hacked and stuff because I don't know, because you need to know more about what's going on to do it correctly. And that's it.